All right, let's dive in. We're with a master installer on a high-end interior urban door install in a non-conditioned space. We're going to follow the entire journey through 6 key stages. We'll start with the shock of a bad opening and follow it all the way to that final super satisfying click of a perfectly hung door.
So now that we've arrived to the job site, the first thing we want to do is take a look at the crate, inspect it, make sure there was no shipping damage, make sure none of the product itself has been cut open, nicked, damaged in any way, and verify your measurements on the product itself. Each piece of the product comes with a size sheet, just as you do when you get your RO sheet from the office. It's always important to give the contractors a call before you arrive to the job site. Go over the opening with them, go over the ROs, and try to verify that the ROs are correct. So once we've checked the crate and make sure that there's no damage to the product, everything looks good, and we got our sizes down pat, we'll go inside and check the opening. So come with me, let's go take a look. What we're gonna do here is check the opening sizes. Our cut sheet shows that our door is 144 inches wide by 120 inches tall. So we'll come to the opening, we'll run our tape measure, we'll check our widths on a couple places in the opening, and then once we got our width, we'll check our heights, which if you look at the measurements on this particular door, this opening happens to be a little too big. We'll get with the contractor, have the contractor add the bucking that we need to the jambs, add what we need to the header, and then we can come in and install the door. Also, when you're taking your measurements, if you could see, I brought my tape down here to this part of the floor that's taped right over the finished flooring. It's always important to make sure you're measuring from your finished flooring, especially on interior doors, because if you take your measurement from their protection here, you could be off by 1/4, 3/8, sometimes even 1/2 of an inch. So it's always important to make sure you're going from the finished floor when you're taking your measurements, especially when making changes to the opening.
It's all about sizing up the reality of what you're walking into. And bam, problem number 1 right out of the gate. A pre-visit showed the opening was almost 7 inches too wide.
So as you can see here, the contractor has brought it out to our DLO that we call for the door to be installed. They've added all their padding, they've reapplied the drywall strips where they needed to be added. So all of this stuff is ready to be blended and finished once we get our new door in. Now that we've verified all the measurements and made sure that everything's good to go, we're ready to start installing. We know that this is gonna be a 3-piece system. So you're gonna have 2 side lights, a frame section, and then these are gonna be our door slabs. So knowing that, we're gonna unbox this one piece at a time, keep everything protected as we go. We're not gonna bring everything out, rip it all open, and have it laying across the job site. We know we need to start with a side light, so that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna pull a side light, inspect it, make sure it's good. While we're doing this, we like to keep the wrapping on it, so that way if we do happen to bump into something or anything along the way, product is protected. Now that we got it inside, we like to cut it where all of the tape lines are at and open it up in a way that we're gonna make sure we don't damage any of the frame with our tools. And then once you get done with the whole top run, everything should unfold and come out nice and easy. Come down here at the ends, make your relief cut. Once again, making sure that you keep all your tools off of the frame to make sure we don't do any damage. One thing I want to note is whenever you get ready for installation and you got your first piece unpackaged, you want to come to your paperwork, and if you look here, it's got an overhead view of the unit, and see it'll show you outside and inside. So we always want to make sure that when we're setting these jambs on the walls, see this one, it shows your jam, it protrudes to the exterior. So that would make this our interior surface, and the jam where it extends out is going to be our exterior. Always important to check because you don't want to put it in backwards. Right here along the side, the factory's going to have all of your mold together screws pre-threaded and in the side of the product whenever it arrives. So always make sure that you take that out, set it to the side, and then you'll be ready for your next piece to screw together. So now that that's unpackaged, set our first section of the unit. We're a little tight at the header, so we're gonna need to go through, and you can see it's just hitting on the edge of the drywall, so we'll go along that with a razor knife, shave that hanging drywall down, and then we should be ready to go. This is a special tool that I get from Newborn Supply. It just really gives you a lot of leverage for stuff like this. Instead of trying to take a regular razor knife and whittle at this drywall, we get nice leverage. a lot of control, and also a lot of these homes that get the iron product have a level 5 finish. When you're cutting on drywall, you don't want to have something short in your hand where you slip and gouge the wall because it could be already finished. And we'll try to set this section before we go any further to make sure we don't need to move any of the wood up or plane any of the wood down. Once you put the bottom in at an angle and set it, it actually will make this distance grow. So that's another important thing when you're checking your measurements. Even if it's tight, it's always important to dry fit it before you drill or do anything that's permanent, because you need to know that you have enough room to manipulate this product where you're not doing any damage to any permanent flooring or anything like that. Even though it will fit, we have an issue getting it in without damaging the flooring. We'll go ahead and get the planer, take a couple passes on this wood to get us the distance we need, and then we'll give it another try. All right, let's see how she does. And that's the magic of a planer. We were able to do all of that, make it fit, it's nice and smooth, without having to tear all of that stuff back out that we had the contractor add. So first thing we're gonna do is whatever plane of this wall it is, we're gonna match the top of the door flush with the drywall, and then we're gonna come down here and we're gonna make the bottom of the door flush with the drywall. So we'll go ahead and get the bottom set, and then now we'll come all the way up to the top. We wanna start at our two furthest points away from each other, because that wall can change in between the middle, and then that gives them something to float to make sure it stays nice and smooth and your reveal is consistent all the way down the door. Now that we have the two corners set, we're gonna come back to the top right here and tag another screw in here so that we start to get nice and flush with the long side reveal. So you're gonna have your header reveal and you're gonna have your jamb reveal. We're gonna make sure we get that header reveal started now, and now that'll keep that in place and keep it from wanting to bow out as we're placing the next piece of product. All right, we got our next piece. Now always make sure you have two nice strong guys to carry this product. So this is gonna be our second side light. And the reason that we're gonna set the side light before we set the frame is if you come over here and look at this frame here and this one, you can see that they have a flange on them. This is a receiving flange that the frame is gonna butt up against whenever we put the frame in here. Now if you notice, both of them are on the inside. This one's gonna be on the inside. You can see our leg here for the exterior of the door. This leg's on the inside. So by putting the two side lights in first, what you're gonna allow for the door frame itself to actually be able to come in and set. Because if we were to set the door frame's gonna have its receiving groove on the outside right here on the exterior. If we had this door frame already set, then we would have to come from the inside over here with our final piece. And as you can see, we've got some custom cabinetry here that it won't allow us to come up from the inside the proper way. So we want to stay away from that and eliminate any type of damage to this finished product in the house. That's why it's always important to make sure you check your flanges to figure out where you want to set each product first to make sure it all comes together nice and smooth without damaging anything. One particular thing that I want to note about this particular style of installation, this is not an exterior unit and it's not a wine room unit. So we're not trying to keep any elements in, we're not trying to keep any elements out. This is purely just an office room door interior. So we're not putting sealant down in this particular door because we want to make sure that we keep all this floor as nice as possible. All right, so same thing on this end. We're a little tight. We always check before we plane for no reason. We'll pull it back out, take a couple strikes with the planer, go ahead and plane this center section so that we're able to get the frame in once the doors are set. Since it's a 3-piece unit, we're always going to start by making sure that our tack screws are tight so that we have all the distance we need to make sure that we don't scratch the frame up. So you'll see here in a minute, once we get the frame in here, we'll have a little bit of a gap between the frame and the jambs, and we do that on purpose to make sure when we're pitching that frame up, it doesn't scratch along the side of the side lights and damage anything. Then once we have the frame in place, we'll go ahead and start our mole screws, and then that way we can loosen up our tack screws, make sure the unit gets sucked together nice and tight, and then we'll start shimming and leveling everything out. So another thing to note is when the product stays outside, it will get hot with direct sunlight. So whenever we have to move pieces around to get to the frame, we like to take them, find a nice shaded spot, and we'll go ahead and set our slabs in an area like this where it can stay nice and cool. That way when we go to install it, we can handle it. And as you can see, same thing with the frame. The wrapping is a little different, but we want to make sure we go piece by piece, get it off as nice and gently as possible. And then one thing to note on the frame, all of the exterior surfaces of the frame are gonna be hidden. They're gonna have a chance, they're gonna either be sitting against another piece of frame, a wall, the header. So if we do need to cut along this wrapping, we like to always make sure we cut along the outside of the frame. That way, if the blade does happen to touch the frame, we're not damaging any finish that we're gonna see with the naked eye. And then always make sure on each individual unit, you're gonna get your plugs. We've got plugs here, and the plugs that came with the doors. And on their Milano and Urban series, they are gonna ship it with temporary plugs already in place. So you're gonna have to make sure, as we did here before we installed, we go through on the back side and we pop all the temporary plugs out. That way we can get to our screws. All of our screws are installed and this unit's shimmed off, then we'll go back and put all the new plugs in. And when we have to pancake or flip something like this in a finished area, when we're packaging it, if you do have an open end area, always you have a guy on that end to make sure everything stays protected. Tip of the day, these jambs, they don't have a sill on them. This is a temporary sill that they put in place just to make sure that this door doesn't warp during shipping. So we want to make sure that we keep this piece in there until we have everything unwrapped, and we have at least a guy on each end of this sill whenever this is removed to keep this product from getting bent or warped or anything like that. Because if you remove this and this jamb bends down, it could cause some serious problems up top, and then that's going to give us issues when we go to get our doors aligned later on in the video. And another important thing to note, especially for the installers, anytime you unpackage something, go through, look at the frame, make sure there's no damage from the factory, because this is going to be important to note back to the distributor. All right, so now it's important to always keep somebody here on this end, especially the high side, whenever we're taking this temporary piece out. Yeah, see? And that's with having pressure on it. So that's gonna be free. If you don't have somebody standing here, this thing's gonna fold down and it's gonna crinkle the whole thing at the corner. So pull the bottom one off. All right. So see, we try to keep at least 3 to 4 guys on these open end frames at all times to make sure that we're keeping this product as straight as possible. We don't want anything to happen to this because, like I said, it can affect your whole door reveal if any of these corners get bent at any time during installation. And now we're gonna go ahead and bring this in, and like I talked about earlier, we suck the side lights all the way to the jambs. We know we've got some space here. So we make sure that we give ourselves the extra room to come in here nice and easy. They're a little tight at the header, so we're gonna pull this back out and do the same thing we did with the side lights. Just give it a little more love with the planer. We wanna create the space to get this in here without scraping it or damaging it. We don't wanna get our measurement exactly right for this to fit tight because we wanna keep everything else protected. So what we do is once we get this all together, we'll get a couple bolts started and then we'll loosen up our tack screws. And once we loosen our tack screws, what that'll allow it to do is pull this frame together where it needs to be. And then we'll take a measurement at the bottom to make sure that our bottom measurement matches our top measurement for the reveal. That'll ensure that our doors are nice and straight, and then we'll start shimming off our side jambs and setting them where they need to be for their final home. Before we start screwing them off, even after we get the corners shimmed, we always start with the corners. We use the corners as our ledger. So we'll even bring the door slabs in here and we'll set the door slabs before we screw this off. That way, if we need to tweak this door at all, make any adjustments, we can do it before we have all the screws and shims in place. This is actually a piece of composite. We'll wrap this with a towel, make sure it's a nice soft strike on the finish, and then that'll get us where we need to be. Now that we got that tacked and started, we'll go ahead and loosen all of our tack screws. And we'll take the 2 out of the headers here, so that way it allows us to bring them over. Pretty much the theme of everything. Until we get the door slabs in and we get everything lined up, we want to just tack tops and bottoms of everything. And that way we can still manipulate it whatever way we need to. And we need to make sure that we put these copper thrush washers on every single hinge before the door goes into place. That'll make sure that we keep the steel from contacting each other, steel on steel, and rubbing this finish loose. We'll also apply a lithium grease to these hinges to make sure nothing ever rusts up or seizes on the door. We like to use the Lucas Oil Products white lithium grease. It's not the cheapest grease, but these also aren't the cheapest doors. It's been a great product for us. And we've had doors that have been installed for 3 to 5 years that still never need to be serviced with this grease.
Now that that's done, we'll go ahead and use a level on the sides and across the top to ensure the frame is plumb, square, and properly aligned before securing completely.
So up here at our header, we're right about 70 and an 1/8-ish. So we want to make sure we keep that measurement the whole way between the doors. And we're right there at 70 and a 16th, 17 and an 1/8. Come down here and check the bottom. We need to shim this one off the wall just a little bit. But what we'll do is we'll go ahead and set the door slabs first so that we know which side needs to move to make the reveals correct. Sometimes those holes can be a little off. What we'll do is we'll take a 1/2-inch drill bit and drill right inside of it.
Use a 3/8 inch socket to tighten the supplied 3/8 by 1.5 inch bolts. If any are missing, replacements can be found at most hardware stores.
This is our #1 tool right here. There's not a tool in our arsenal that is more important than these right here. These allow us to handle the weight of these door slabs, but still maintain complete control. If you're installing any of Palm City's door, any iron door in general, if you don't have a set of these straps, you're not doing it right. And then always have a guy watching the hinges to make sure that you're not digging any of these hinges into that frame when you set these panels. See how much control you're able to have with these straps? So after we got our first door slab set, we could tell that our header's a little tight at the top. So first thing we're gonna wanna do, get a screw in the header, make sure our header's tight, because we knew that we had to, shave that down and get the planer up there to get it to fit. So we'll set a screw in there, make sure that's tight. And then what we can also do is pull the bottom of this door over to where it gives us the correct reveal. See, we're still a little tight. So then we'll come over here. Zach will put some pressure on the frame right here. And it'll actually move this whole bottom of this sill over, which will make the door top pitch over and give us more clearance on our header. Now it looks like it's good. I'll get up there and check the roller catch. Now it's perfect, and we got a nice reveal all the way across. 1, 2, 3. Always make sure that you get on the ladder and check your header heights before you close it. So that's one, needs to come up, opposite of the other side. But before we go ahead and bring this up, we need to take this door and make sure how much room we have between the two slabs. If you can see that, we have a tighter gap at the top than the bottom, so it shows us that we need to move that sill over. So the adjustment we need to make to get our reveals right is actually the correct adjustment we need anyway. Grab some shims. Here, go a little looser than that, Zach. And then tighten it up just a hair. Right there. Now we have no center contact. Now we have perfect reveals. All right. Hit your top right there. Hit that corner again. Good. Same thing here. Hit this outside frame. If we go to the next screw hole over from where we tacked it off before, that ensures that we're not going to go back into the first screw hole that we drilled and move the frame over. Once we get the rest of these screwed off, then we'll go back to those corner spots, and then it won't pull the frame. All right, take a little bit of shim out of that corner. Ease the screw in. Right there, shim it off. Now, since we got all our 4 corners adjusted, you can look up here and see that that reveal is exactly the same all the way across these door slabs, and that's what we're looking to achieve.
The owner wanted both panels to operate independently, so we're using roller catches at the header to hold them closed, instead of the traditional flush bolt method with one active and one stationary door.
You can see that there's these roller catches. Usually they'll be on the sides of the jambs of these doors for our exterior doors, but on the interior doors they do one at the top. So once you get your doors lined up and you got all your reveals good, you're going to want to take a number 3 Phillips, and clockwise is going to bring this roller catch out. Do a little bit bit at a time until you find a sweet spot. Gonna have just enough tension on it to engage into this roller catch strike here. And then that's what's gonna keep these doors closed. You don't want too much tension on it. You want it to where the door is nice and easy to operate, but firm enough to stay catch. Nice and smooth, and that's what we're looking for in operation. We don't wanna have to force anything. I mean, obviously we have a little bit of dunnage down here that we need to work around because this is still in the construction stage. But for the most part, you want to make sure all your reveals are perfect and everything is nice and smooth. And then once you achieve that, then you can go back around and shim all the way around the door. Make sure everything is screwed off how it's supposed to be. So now that the door's set, we're gonna get these screws in, but we're just gonna get them to where the shank's about a 1/4 inch out. We don't want to tighten them up yet. We don't want to manipulate. Our main goal is to get these in place before we start shimming. We like to use composite shims when it comes to the iron doors because you're able to break them off by hand. Wood shims and some other shims, you have to get a chisel in here up against it or a fin tool. And we want to keep that stuff away from this door to keep from damaging the finish. And now what we'll do is we'll work our way up the door. We don't want to force those shims in there. We're not trying to get them super tight. We want them nice and snug in that opening so that when we come back and tighten up our screws, then it locks the shims in and we're good to go. If you force that shim in there, what you're going to do is you could possibly manipulate the middle of this jam to where it comes together. And you shim it too tight, the center of these doors will actually hit each other. So after we get the door all finished off and we do our job, we get all the shims in, everything's screwed off and we're done. The finish guys will come through, trim this whole door out. They'll case it just like they've done these windows here. And that's why it's important that we set this doors to reveal. So now that we got everything done, signed off by the contractor, we're gonna leave all of the protective wrapping on all of the glass to ensure that no damage gets done to this door. You know, there's still continuing construction going on. These guys still have a lot of finish work and stuff to do. So we just try to keep the doors protected as much as possible. And on exterior doors, we'll even go as far as to wrap these door slabs with some type of coverage, whether it be house wrap, a plastic bag to cover it, something that's just extra coverage to cover the handles and stuff. This is an interior unit and we're mostly done with the house, so we don't have to worry about that as much here. But it's very important to keep all this stuff on and let the contractors take all this stuff off whenever they're ready to. Last thing we do is just make sure all the trash is picked up, get the crates disposed of, whether we need to cut them up and haul them off. Just do a once over, make sure the job's nice and clean, make sure you haven't left no tools behind or anything like that. Make sure your sign-off sheet's done with the contractor, and then you're good to go, ready for the next one.